Okay, let's unpack this. We often talk about information overload, but what if the sheer volume of data you encounter isn't just overwhelming? What if, say, 97% of it is actively useless philosophical junk food?
Yeah, that's exactly the challenge here, isn't it? Our source material today it lays it all out. We are not just summarizing a chapter.
No, not at all.
We're trying to decode a mental framework, one that's designed to filter, well, the entire universe. We're diving deep into chapter 4, Information vs. Knowledge.
And this is from the monumental work The Legend Mind, Zero to Infinity, by the SKR, or Sonu Kumar.
Exactly.
And our mission today really is to give you a shortcut. This chapter feels like the absolute bedrock of the author's entire philosophy.
It really is. It's a synthesis of so many different fields. You've got science, math, religion, cosmology, all of it.
And it's all aimed at one thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Answering these huge, striking questions about existence. So you need to pull out the core definitions, trace this evolution from raw data all the way up to wisdom.
And then we have to tackle the author's most radical claim.
The big one. The astonishing 97-to-1 categorization of all information in the world.
It's basically an exploration of epistemology. I mean, how we know what we know, but it's viewed through a really unique lens.
You can tell right from the start. The book's dedication is to immortal guru, the Lord Shiva. That signals that this isn't just an academic exercise.
Not at all. It's a journey of, let's call it, spiritual optimization. When the author talks about maximizing self-improvement, he's not talking about just getting a better job.
No, he means achieving total clarity.
Total clarity. And this deep dive is really about learning how to stop wasting your mental energy on this vast ocean of meaningless noise that's all around us.
I love that framing. Energy conservation through cognitive filtering. It makes it so practical. This isn't just theory for theory's sake. So, okay, let's set the stage a little more. To really get the power of chapter 4, we have to look at where it sits in the book. It's the final crucial piece of the first section, Unit 0.
And Unit 0 is the foundation for everything that comes after. It's titled Legend Self-Improvement.
You should think of it as, I don't know, the ultimate operating manual for your internal system.
That's a great way to put it. The goal here is deeply practical. It's the self-improvement of your internal energy, what the author calls the soul.
With the specific aim of having that soul enlightened by wisdom process. I mean, in real terms, that means achieving maximum spiritual and cognitive clarity.
Exactly. It's the mental conditioning you need before you can even begin to tackle the bigger questions about the universe. If you skip this part, your mind just isn't ready.
The chapters that come before it, in Unit 0, they feel like very deliberate steps on a ladder, all leading right to this discussion of knowledge.
He's incredibly systematic. You can see the logical flow. Chapter 1, for example, focused on the mind, origin, or evolution.
Right, and it specifically linked our physical inputs, like our diet and food, to our ability to actually maintain powerful concentration. So it starts with the body.
It has to. Then Chapter 2 gives you the operational steps. It's called the ladder toward wisdom.
And that's the how-to, right?
Mhm.
The mental practices you need to do to get that sustained high-level concentration and mental longevity.
Then Chapter 3 shifts gears to the necessary mental state, to attitude.
This is where he introduces that concept of a zero or balanced attitude.
Yes, it's like the psychological armor you need to tackle any challenge or problem that comes at you, but without getting bogged down by emotional bias or distress.
And so, after all that preparation, we finally get to Chapter 4, Information vs. Knowledge.
And this isn't just another interesting idea. The author presents it as the key.
The key to knowing the universe maker mind in detail.
Yes, by understanding the essential nature of the information and knowledge that, exists everywhere in the mega universe, it connects the optimized internal mind from the rest of Unit 0 to the external reality.
It's at the bridge.
It's the bridge. You've refined your diet, you've mastered your concentration, you've balanced your attitude, but if you feed that finely tuned system garbage,
The whole thing fails.
the whole process fails. So this distinction between information and knowledge, it's not academic. It's absolutely essential for self-realization, for tapping into those universal principles. You have to know which inputs actually matter.
Okay, let's unpack this central distinction. He calls it a cornerstone of epistemology, cognitive science, and information management, which is a pretty big claim.
It is, but he anchors his definitions in a pretty well-known model, the DDIKW model.
Right. Data, information, knowledge, and then at the very top, wisdom.
It's a hierarchy. We're moving up a very defined ladder from these disconnected little atoms of fact to a fully functional ethical system.
This model is so critical because it forces us to see the transformation that's required at each level.
And it all starts at the bottom with data. It's raw, it might be quantitative, but on its own, it's essentially meaningless.
You can think of data as just pure noise, like the numbers 5, 8, 20, 24, 45, 101. They exist, but they don't answer any questions.
No context at all, just unorganized facts and figures.
So the first critical transformation happens when that data becomes information.
Right. And in this framework, information is data that has been processed, organized, and structured in a very specific way to give it context and meaning.
It's the difference between just a random list of numbers and a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Information answers the basics: the what, who, when, and where.
The source is very clear on this. Information is objective. You can store it, you can transmit it, you can reproduce it, and you don't really need a human to interpret it.
For the most part, a computer can handle 99% of the stage. It's just organized facts and defined figures.
Let's use that weather station example from the source material. I think it really nails this down.
Okay, so you have a weather station, and it's taking a reading every minute. All those raw, individual temperature numbers. That's data.
But then a meteorologist comes along. They take those readings, they organize them by day, by location, and then they present a structured report.
And that report says, the average temperature in London last week was 30 degrees Celsius, which is 5 degrees above the seasonal average.
That is now information. It has context. It tells you what happened and when. It's a statement of fact, and anyone in the world can understand it.
Now we make the fundamental leap. And this is where the machine stops. And the human being, the knower, as the author calls them, has to take over.
This is the transformation of information into knowledge.
And this is the really critical stage.
Knowledge goes way beyond just the facts. It's defined as the understanding, interpretation, and application of that structured information.
It brings in context, personal experience, intuition. Knowledge is what answers the question of how.
And this is why it's so human-centered, isn't it? Because if you lose that report, the information, a great scientist or a great analyst,
the knower,
right, they might still have the patterns in their head. They can probably reproduce the findings because the knowledge is internal.
The source is absolute on this. Knowledge requires a knower to exist. You cannot, in its entirety, store knowledge on a hard drive.
And I think that's because knowledge contains what he calls these tacit elements.
The unspoken stuff.
The unspoken, the intuitive, the skills you get from just doing something over and over again that you can't possibly write down in a manual.
We've all seen this. You work with someone who just knows how to fix a complex machine. The manual, which is the information, is totally useless to them. They just have a feel for it.
Exactly. It's like trying to write down instructions for how to ride a bicycle.
You can't really do it. You can list all the physics, the mechanics, the angles, the muscle groups. That's all information.
But none of that is a substitute for the actual physical, intuitive sense of balance you get through practice. That's the knowledge.
And that balance is tacit. It lives inside the body and the mind of the writer. That's why knowledge is so difficult to transfer. It's not an email attachment. It demands mentorship, shared experience.
Okay, so let's dive deeper into the author's central analogy here, because I think it really brings this distinction to life for the learner. It's the difference between the recipe and the great chef.
This is such a powerful metaphor. It feels like a cinematic moment in the chapter, you know? It defines the whole conversation.
It does. So the recipe, that's the perfect stand-in for information.
It is. It's organized, it's explicit, it's a set of structured instructions. It lists the ingredients, which is the data. It states the quantities, it details the steps. Anyone who can read can follow it. It's objective.
Okay, but then you have the great chef. And the chef represents knowledge. The chef doesn't just blindly follow the recipe.
No, they possess the ability to be great. And that ability comes from a deep understanding and years of practice.
I mean, think about what really separates a great chef from just an average home cook who's just following the instructions.
Well, the average cook, if they're faced with an ingredient that's a little stale or an oven that's running a bit hot, they're stuck.
Right, they fail.
Yeah.
Because they are completely bound by the recipe, by the information.
But the great chef has the knowledge to improvise. They taste the sauce and immediately know it's a little too acidic. The recipe doesn't say add a pinch of sugar, but the chef's knowledge,
Their intuition,
developed through all that experience, it dictates that adjustment. That single act is the application of knowledge.
It's the difference between knowing what ingredient to use and knowing why it interacts with the other ingredients in a certain way and how to substitute it if you need to.
Yes, This involves understanding fundamental principles of flavor, of chemistry, adjusting for humidity, adapting to what a customer wants, and even creating entirely new dishes.
Which is creativity. And that's born not from data, but from a deep internalized mastery of the craft.
And this analogy is so useful when you think about failure.
How so?
Well, the recipe, the information, it never fails. It's just a static document. But the cook, the person applying the knowledge,
They can fail spectacularly.
right, and that failure itself becomes new data for the chef to process and integrate into their knowledge base. It's a continuous feedback loop.
So a failed batch of bread, for instance, that's raw data.
Exactly. The analysis of why it failed, that's information. It might be something simple like the yeast was old.
But the knowledge is the chef's ability to instinctively smell or feel the ingredients before they even start, to anticipate the failure and maybe adjust the fermentation time to compensate.
That's the leap.
So if we're the learner and we've collected all this structured information, all these recipes and reports and manuals, how do we actually make that move? How do we become the chef?
Well, the source details 4 required steps in this process of creation. The steps needed to turn facts into real, internalized, applied knowledge. It's a mental journey.
What's the first step?
The first step is critical analysis. This means rigorous evaluation. You don't just passively accept the information, you dissect it.
You have to understand its limitations, its biases, its real underlying implications.
Think of a medical student. It's not enough to just memorize a list of symptoms. They have to understand the pathophysiology, what the disease is actually doing at a cellular level. That's critical analysis.
Okay, so after analysis, what's next?
The second step is synthesis. This is the art of connection.
So pulling things together.
Right. Knowledge rarely comes from a single source. Synthesis is about combining different, sometimes seemingly unrelated, pieces of information to form a comprehensive, holistic understanding.
Can you give an example?
Sure. An engineer designing a new bridge doesn't just look at the material science report. That's one piece of information.
They have to combine that with geological surveys, traffic flow data, climate predictions.
All different pieces of information, and they synthesize all of it into a single, viable, reliable design. That final design, that's knowledge.
Makes sense. So analysis, synthesis, then what?
The third is application. The author calls this the proving ground.
Because knowledge without application is just theoretical. It's useless.
Exactly. You have to actively use the information to solve real problems, to make crucial decisions, or to create something new.
This is why a pilot who has only ever studied flight manuals isn't trusted to fly a plane. Their knowledge is dormant until it's applied.
And that leads to the final and maybe the most crucial step for mastery, experience.
The trial and error. The time in the trenches.
It's the gaining of a deeper understanding through continuous practice. It's the hours spent in the kitchen or the cockpit or the operating room. Experience is what transforms a general rule, which is information, into a nuanced exception, which is knowledge.
To really solidify this, let's go back to that comparison table of the source. It focuses on 2 main pillars of difference, right? Transferability and scope.
That's right. Let's start with transferability.
Okay. Information is universally and easily transferable. You can email a 500-page financial report to anyone on Earth, and they receive 100% of the facts instantly.
But knowledge is sticky. It's difficult to transfer. You can't just email someone the knowledge of how to lead a large corporation.
No, that takes years of mentorship, of shadowing, of being in the room when decisions are made.
Shared situational experience, personal training. The transfer is inherently incomplete because you can't digitize those tacit elements we talked about.
And then there's the difference in scope, which dictates what you can actually achieve.
Right. Information limits itself. It answers the explicit details. Who, what, where, when. It just describes the surface of reality.
But knowledge expands your cognitive reach. It lets you answer the complex underlying questions. How and why.
Knowledge gets at the mechanisms, the deeper significance of the facts.
Let's use that financial comparison again, but maybe with more detail. Let's say you have a new startup. The information is the detailed spreadsheet.
Okay, and it says, we spent $10,000 on digital ads last month. Revenue increased by 15%. That's the information.
The knowledge belongs to the marketing director. They look at that same information, but they see so much more.
They understand how that money was spent, why that specific campaign generated 15% growth and not 5%, and how to reallocate the budget in the next quarter to maximize the return.
They might even predict that the cost per click is going to double next month. based on their experience.
Exactly. They are interpreting the facts in light of market dynamics, what competitors are doing, their own previous failures, all that internalized knowledge.
The distinction is just so vital for self-improvement because it tells the learner that just collecting facts, just having the recipe, is a pretty low-level achievement.
The true power comes from application and interpretation.
Which brings us to the highest goal of the DIKW model, and really the philosophical goal of Unit 0.
Wisdom. If knowledge is the how, then wisdom introduces this ultimate layer of judgment and ethics.
So let's run up that ladder one last time. Let's use the product sales example to see how adding context and purpose changes everything at each stage.
Okay, so we begin with data. Raw, discrete numbers from the warehouse scanner, let's say. 25, 42, and 101 packages shipped over 3 months.
Just numbers. Then we add context and structure and we get information. Sales of product X were 25 units in March, 45 in April, and 105 in May. We are seeing rapid linear growth.
Okay, now we apply interpretation and planning to get to knowledge. Sales of product X are growing rapidly because of our successful marketing campaign and increased demand in the 18 to 35 age bracket. Therefore, we should allocate $200,000 more in resources to this product and increase our production capacity.
That's the actionable, smart business move.
It is, but the journey doesn't stop with being smart. It has to become wise.
And wisdom is the integration of that knowledge with universal values and long-term consequence planning. It's the final ethical check.
The source gives a really compelling example of this. The wise action is, given the rapid growth, we should allocate more resources and increase capacity.
But we also have to consider how this rapid expansion impacts our long-term sustainability, our ethical commitments to sourcing materials, and our overall commitment to community welfare.
See the difference. Wisdom looks beyond immediate profit, beyond immediate self-gain.
It integrates the needs of the soul, the community, the universe, that universe maker mind, into the decision.
It asks the question, is this decision good for the whole system, not just for me right now? It's the difference between a successful tyrant who has knowledge and a benevolent, enduring leader who has wisdom.
It's the highest level of judgment. It requires a deep understanding of cause and effect across huge timelines and value systems.
And this brings us to the centerpiece of the entire chapter. This is the most radical claim the author makes.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. He takes this entire philosophical structure, this movement from data all the way up to wisdom, and uses it to categorize every single piece of information humans encounter.
It stops being just a cognitive model and becomes a global inventory. And the numbers he uses are, well, they're startling.
He offers what he calls a tripartite classification. He claims 100% of all the information in the world falls into one of 3 buckets.
And he uses the metaphor of Earth's water supply to dramatically illustrate the utility or the lack of utility of each of those buckets.
All right, let's start with the big one. The one that should make every learner listening right now just pause and think about how they spend their mental energy.
Type 1, illusion information. And the author assigns a massive dominating percentage to this category.
What is this?
97% of all information in the world.
97%. That's, I mean, that is virtually everything we see, hear, read, and maybe believe.
The definition he gives is harsh and clear. It's information with no meaning or no any logic behind it.
He describes it as blind belief, things that are passed down uncritically by ancestors and followed just out of social habit or fear.
Right. It lacks the critical analysis or the synthesis that's required to turn it into useful knowledge.
And the water analogy here is, it's just so impactful. This 97% of information is compared to the total percentage of ocean salty water on Earth.
It exists in these vast, overwhelming quantities. You're swimming in it.
But, crucially, it is not drinkable for humans. It can't sustain life. And it definitely can't sustain the process of self-improvement or enlightening the soul.
So the author's advice is not subtle at all. Following this type of information leads to no self or community development.
The explicit instruction is to skip yourself from this type of information to save your energy and time.
Just ignore it.
I have to push back a bit here, just based on the sheer scale of that claim. 97%. Is the author basically claiming that almost all human traditions, habits, cultural norms are functionally useless noise?
That's the core philosophical test that he's imposing on you, the learner.
And what's the test?
The test is its utility toward the ultimate goal, wisdom and welfare. If a piece of information doesn't pass the test of critical analysis and synthesis to move it towards knowledge, then he categorizes it as illusion. It doesn't matter how long it's been practiced.
So he's demanding an absolute purity of input for your mind.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's look at the specific examples he uses to prove his point about this illusion information. And we should be clear, we're just reporting what's in the source material here.
Of course. The first example he cites is a common one in certain cultures. It's the blind belief that if a cat crosses your path when you're going somewhere important.
You have to stop or take a different route because something bad will happen.
Right. It's a direct example of a habitual belief that dictates your behavior, but has absolutely no logical or causal relationship to the actual outcome.
And to broaden that for a universal learner, that's analogous to superstitions all over the world. Breaking a mirror means 7 years of bad luck, the fear of the number 13 not walking under a ladder.
They're all cultural inputs that consume mental energy. They dictate behavior, but they yield zero progress toward wisdom. They're just static.
What's the second example?
The second one is temporal. It's the fear of leaving your home at exactly 12 a.m. or 12 p.m.
Because of a belief that a wrong thing happen will occur at those specific times.
Again, it imposes a constraint on you, a fear that consumes energy but is based on zero logical analysis.
And the third example is about group size.
Yes. The belief that you should never go somewhere with a group of exactly 3 people because it guarantees a wrong thing happen with you.
The author is stressing that these are just strong, blind beliefs that people follow without any meaningful justification.
And the forcefulness of that 97% number is meant to be a shock to the system for the learner.
The message is that the biggest enemy of your self-improvement is not making a mistake.
Yeah.
It's noise. It's wasting your effort on things that just do not matter.
You'll waste your life drinking salty water.
Okay. So moving on from that massive category, we get to a much smaller, but maybe more deliberate threat. Type 2, negative information.
This accounts for only 2% of the world's total information.
And this sounds more sinister than just illusion.
It is. It's defined as information that pertains to black magic, and it's used specifically for malicious purposes, to manipulate, to control, or to slave someone. He explicitly labels it selfish desire information.
So unlike the 97%, which is just accidental noise,
Yep.
the 2% is actively and malevolently structured information. It's designed for non-welfare purposes.
And the source acknowledges the reality that, many people around the world hold a strong belief in the power of this type of information. It's persuasive because it promises power or control, even if it's based on false premises.
How does the water analogy work for this one?
The 2% of information is compared to the 2% of fresh water on Earth, the glaciers, lakes, and rivers. This water exists, and creatures need it for survival. It has utility.
Right.
But the source immediately qualifies that. He says it is not as pure to drinking for survival.
So it sustains life, but it's polluted.
It's polluted by the taint of selfish desire. It is functional, it can grant you a temporary advantage like manipulation, but it can lead to true lasting wisdom. It's ultimately damaging to the soul's real goal.
So if 97% is the vast undrinkable ocean, and 2% is this polluted but functional fresh water, that leaves us with the rarest and most critical element.
Type 3, positive information, the crucial remaining 1% of all information.
This is the goal. This is the pure life-giving source.
The definition states that it belongs entirely to the welfare purpose of the entire community, and, maybe most importantly, its source is the wisdom process itself.
And the algae.
This 1% represents the total percentage of pure drinking water that's available for human and creature survival on Earth. It is a pure, highly useful information that is both sustainable and beneficial for the long-term well-being of you and society.
So where do you find this precious 1%? The source actually gives some concrete examples.
It does. He says you find it in the holy books of different cultures. And he specifically cites Hindu, Sikhs, Islam, and Christianity.
So he's defining the wisdom in these core religious texts as being fundamentally structured for the welfare purpose.
Yes. In his framework, it passes the test of critical analysis and synthesis because it leads directly to the highest level of the DIKW model to wisdom, which integrates ethical long-term judgment.
The author also cites a major historical example of this type of positive information.
He does. The knowledge given by Lord Krishna in Dwapar Yuga, the historical Gita knowledge. He notes that this is followed in the present world as a part of positive information because its instruction leads to enlightened action and to welfare.
Synthesizing this whole categorization. I mean, that's the core payoff of this deep dive.
It is. We've established the structure.
Yeah.
The soul is seeking enlightenment through the wisdom process. But that process can only begin when the input is pure.
And the author's revolutionary claim is that you have to actively reject 99% of what the world offers you as a valid source for your self-improvement.
The immediate practical implication for you, the learner, is profound. Stop searching for knowledge in that 97% ocean of salty water.
And stop getting distracted by the 2% of impure fresh water, the negative selfish desire information.
Exactly. Conserve all your energy and focus it entirely on that pure, verifiable, welfare-driven 1%.
It connects back perfectly to the whole point of Unit 0, Legend Self-Improvement.
You've done the hard work of refining your mind, but that refined engine needs high-octane fuel. This 9721 filter provides the roadmap for identifying that fuel.
So knowledge is gained by ignoring the vast bulk of the world's beliefs and focusing only on that rare source that's derived from true wisdom.
The author, the HESKR, isn't just presenting a philosophical concept. It's a survival guide for the mind, especially in an age of maximum information saturation.
It forces you to question every single input that comes your way. Is this a fact? Is it an application? Or is it just illusion? Is this leading me toward welfare? Or is it just part of the 97% that's wasting my time?
And that framework we discussed, the structured path from raw numbers all the way up to ethical judgment, that gives you the tools to perform that rigorous analysis yourself.
You can now test any belief or practice against those 4 steps of knowledge creation: critical analysis, synthesis, application, and experience.
And if it doesn't stand up to that test, it falls into the noise category.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive into the unique epistemology of the legend mind. I think we've successfully mapped that structured path from data to wisdom, and most importantly, we've internalized the author's extraordinary filter.
That 9721 model for everything that exists.
For you, the learner, understanding this structure is really the ultimate energy conservation strategy. It gives you the mandate to be absolutely ruthless in evaluating what you let into your mind.
And that analogy of the great chef should remind you that just gathering recipes is useless without the tacit skill and the experience to actually apply them.
And hopefully that powerful image of the 1% pure drinking water versus the 97% salty ocean will stick with you and prevent you from ever again confusing a bunch of organized facts with profound applied ethical understanding.
And if the purpose of positive information is universal welfare and its source is the wisdom process, this raises an important and, I think, a necessary question for you to consider based directly on the source material.
Okay, what is it?
What specific daily practice or long-held tradition, something you currently take for granted and maybe follow out of sheer habit or social pressure, might you reevaluate today to determine if it truly falls into that debilitating 97% category of illusion information? Think about the immediate tangible time and energy you could save by just skipping it entirely and redirecting that focus toward the pure 1%.